he says, reared in the belief of the divine right of the Imams by his father. He early met an Ismaili missionary, Emir Dareb, with whom he argued strenuously against the Emir's particular form of the creed. Then, some time later, he went through a bout of severe illness in which he feared to die and began to think that the Ismaili doctrine might really be the road to redemption and paradise. If he died unconverted, he might be damned. Thus it was that as soon as he recovered, he sought out another Ismaili propagandist, Abu Najam, and then others. Eventually, he went to Egypt to study the creed at its headquarters. He was received with honor by the Caliph due to his former position at the court of Malik Shah. In order to increase their own importance, the high officials of the court made a good deal of public play of the significance of the new convert, but this fact seemed in the end to help Hassan more than it did them. He entered into political intrigue and was arrested, then confined in a fortress. No sooner had he entered the prison than a minaret collapsed, and in some unexplained way this was interpreted as an omen that Hassan was in reality a divinely protected person. The Caliph, hurriedly making Hassan a number of valuable gifts, had him put aboard a ship sailing for northwest Africa. This gave him the funds which he was to use for setting up his paradise, and also, through some quirk of fate, the disciples whom he sought. A tremendous storm blew up, terrifying the captain, crew, and passengers alike. Prayers were held, and Hassan was asked to join. He refused. Quote, "The storm is my doing. How can I pray that it abate?" unquote, he asks. And then says this, quote, "I have indicated the displeasure of the Almighty. If we sink, I shall not die, for I am immortal. If you want to be saved, believe in me, and I shall subdue the winds," unquote. Well, at first, the offer was not accepted. Presently, however, when the ship seemed on the point of capsizing, the desperate passengers came to him and swore eternal allegiance. Hassan was still very calm, and continued so until the storm abated. The ship was then driven on to the seacoast of Syria, where Hassan disembarked together with 2 of the merchant passengers who became his first real disciples. Hassan was not yet ready for the fulfillment of his destiny as he saw it for the time being. He was traveling under the guise of a missionary of the Caliph in Cairo. From Aleppo he went to Baghdad, seeking a headquarters where he should be safe from interference and where he yet could become powerful enough to expand. Into Persia the road led him, traveling through the country, making converts to his ideas, which were still apparently strongly based upon the secret doctrines of the Egyptian Ismailis. Everywhere he created a really devoted disciple, Arfidei. He bade him stay and try to enlarge the circle of his followers. These circles became hatching grounds for the production of self-sacrificers, the initiates, who were drawn from the ranks of the most promising ordinary converts. Thus it was that miniature training centers, modeled upon the abode of learning, were in being within a very few months of his return to his homeland. During his travels, a trusted lieutenant, one Hussein Kahini, reported that the Iraqi district where the fortress of Al-Yumat was situated seemed to be an ideal place for proselytism. Most of the ordinary people of that place, in fact, had been persuaded into the Ismaili way of thinking. The only obstacle was the government. Ali Mahdi, who looked upon the Caliph of Baghdad as his spiritual and temporal lord. The first converts were expelled from the country, but before many months, however, there were so many Ismailis among the populace that the governor was compelled to allow them to return. Hassan, though he would not brook, would not allow him. The prospective owner of Alamut decided to try a trick. He offered the governor 3,000 pieces of gold for the amount of land which could be encompassed by the hide of an ox. When Mahdi agreed to such a sale, Hassan produced a skin, cut it into the thinnest possible thongs, and joined them together to form a string which encompassed the castle of Alamut. Although the governor refused to honor any such bargain, Hassan produced an order from a very highly placed official of the Seljuk rulers, ordering that the fortress be handed over to Hassan for 3,000 gold pieces. Well, it turned out that this official was himself a secret follower of the Sheikh of the Mountain. The year was AD 1090. Hassan was now ready for the next part of his plan. He attacked and routed the troops of the emir who had been placed in the governorship of the province, and wielded the people of the surrounding districts into a firm band of diligent and trustworthy workers and soldiers answerable to him and him alone. Within 2 years, the vizier Nazim al-Mulk had been stabbed to the heart by an assassin sent by Hassan, and the Emperor Malik Shah, who dared to send troops against him, died in grave suspicion of poison. Hassan's revenge upon his class fellow was to make him the very first target of his reign of terror. You see, with the king's death, the whole realm was split up into warring factions. For long, the assassins alone retained their cohesion. In under a decade, they had made themselves masters of all Persian Iraq and of many forts throughout the empire. This they did by forays, direct attack, the poisoned dagger, and in any other manner which seemed expedient. Indeed, the ends always justified the means. The Orthodox religious leaders pronounced one interdict after another against their doctrines, all to no effect. By now, the entire loyalty of the Ismailis under him had been transferred from the Caliph to the personality of the Sheikh of the Mountain, who became the terror of every prince in that part of Asia, the Crusader chiefs included. Despite and despising fatigues, dangers, and tortures, the assassins joyfully gave their lives whenever it pleased the great master, who required them either to protect himself or to carry out his mandates of death. The victim, having been pointed out, the faithful, clothed in a white tunic with a red sash, the colors of innocence and blood, went on their mission without being deterred by distance or danger. Having found the person they sought, they awaited the favorable moment for slaying him, and their daggers very seldom ever missed their aim. Richard the Lionheart was at one time accused of having asked the Lord of the Mountain to have Conrad of Montferrat killed, a plot which was carried out thus, quote, "Two assassins allowed themselves to be baptized, and placing themselves beside him, seemed intent only on praying. But the favorable opportunity presented itself. They stabbed him, and one took refuge in the church. But hearing that the prince had been carried off still alive, he again forced himself into Montferrat's presence, and stabbed him a second time, and then expired without a complaint, amidst refined tortures," unquote. You see, the method of controlling men's minds that Hassan had perfected was extremely effective and powerful. And not even one incident of one of his followers failing to carry out his orders exactly can be found. The order of the assassins had perfected their method of securing the loyalty of human beings to an extent and on a scale which has seldom been paralleled. The assassins carried on the battle on two fronts. You see, they fought whichever side in the Crusades served their purposes. They fought with the Knights Templar, and they fought against the Knights Templars. At the same time, they continued the struggle against the Persians. The son and successor of Nizam al-Mulk was laid low by an assassin dagger. The Sultan, who had succeeded his father, Malik Shah, and gained power over most of his territories, was marching against them. One morning, however, he woke with an assassin weapon stuck neatly into the ground near his head. Within it was a note warning him to call off the proposed siege of Alamut. Well, he came to terms with the assassins after that, powerful ruler though he undoubtedly was. You see, the assassins eventually had what amounted to a free hand in exchange for a pact by which they promised to reduce their military power. It was during their pacts, their treaties, their battles with the Knights Templars that many, some say most, some few even say all of the Knights Templars were initiated into the mysteries. Hassan lived for 34 years after his acquisition of Alamut. On only 2 occasions since then had he even left his room, yet he ruled an invisible empire as great and as fearsome as any man before or since, they say. But his empire may still exist today, changed and melded with other sects of the mysteries. Hassan seemed to realize that death was almost upon him and calmly began to make plans for the perpetual continuance, folks, of the Order of the Assassins. And we now begin the latter days of the Assassins, which we will not finish in this hour, but will finish in the next. The ruler of one of the most terrifying organizations the world has ever known was without a lineal successor. In fact, he had both of his sons killed, one for carrying out an unauthorized murder, and the other for drinking wine. Certainly a case of do as I say, not as I do. He called his 2 most trusted lieutenants from the strongholds which they maintained on his behalf, Kia Buzurg Umid, Kia of Great Promise, and Abu Ali of Qazwin. Kia was to inherit the spiritual and mystical aspect, while Abu Ali attended to the military and administrative affairs of the order. It is said that Hassan bin Sabah died almost immediately afterwards in 1124 at 90 years of age, having given the world a new word, assassin. Assassin in Arabic signifies guardians, and some commentators have considered this to be the true origin of the word guardians of the secrets, which the Knights Templar took to Europe. The organization of the order under Hassan called for missionaries, friends who were disciples and Fidavi's devotees. The last group had been added by Hassan to the Ismaili original, and these were the trained killers. Fidavis wore white with a girdle cap or boots of red. In addition to careful coaching in where and when to place the dagger in the victim's bosom, they were trained in such things as languages, the dress and manners of monks, merchants, and soldiers, any of whom they were ready to impersonate in carrying out their mission. The chief was known as Sayyidna, which means our prince or leader, and popularly, because of the mountain stronghold of Alamut, as the Sheikh of the mountain. Now, Alamut, or the stronghold on the mountain, was also known as the Eagle's Nest. And this is what Hitler named his mountain retreat. And there's also an Eagle's Nest near Santa Barbara, California, which very few people know anything about yet. Now, the Sheikh of the Mountain is the figure referred to in Crusaders' writings as Sidney, or Senex di Monte, the first word being a literal translation of the word pir, Persian for ancient or sage. There were 3 great missionaries who ruled 3 territories. After the Friends and Fidavis came to the Laziks, aspirants who were being trained for membership of the society but were as yet uninitiated.